When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up to the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to speak and taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who persecute it for righteousness' sakes, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." The Gospel of the Lord. So, one of the many blessings I've had in my life is that from a very early age, I started to go to a place called Camp Chanko. Now, Chanko is the camp and retreat center for the Diocese of Southern Virginia. It's located on the James River in Surry County. It was through my many spiritual gifts and lifelong relationships that I gained there at Chanko that I began to further appreciate the Christian community that I had been baptized into. I also learned what it looks like to be called into action by that same community. And one of the sayings, or the things that taught there, that still sticks with me today, is a very simple saying: don't wait for George to do it. Who's George? Well, George is the imaginary person who would do something for us if we waited long enough, or left it alone because we didn't really want to do it or thought it was too hard. And because George was imaginary, then what it really meant was that things wouldn't get done. Now, in the context of my early years at Chanko, it was usually said by camp counselors trying to teach a bunch of young children who are away from home, sometimes for the very first time, about early lessons of self-care or self-responsibility. Think about it. You can almost hear it. Don't wait for George to brush your teeth. Don't wait for George to pick up your dirty clothes. And don't wait for George to make up your bunk. And other things like that. But as we got older, don't wait for George began to apply more to how we are treated or wish to be treated and how we treat other people. Do you see that girl that needs help? Don't wait for George to help her. You see that boy sitting over there looking lonely and somebody needs to talk to him? Don't wait for George to go talk to him. You see that kid who needs cheering up? Well, don't wait for George. The entire history of our Christian faith is filled with people who didn't wait for George to do what God, what their faith has called them and all of us to do. We call these people saints. A saint is literally one who sets their life apart from an angry and egocentric society to follow the way of Jesus. We know life is hard. We know it inundates us with difficulties and pains and failures and struggles. However, faith also teaches us that God does not abandon God's children, then or now. It is those who have used their faith to lean into whatever challenges life throws at them. Those are the ones that stand out as saints. And on this very, very special day called All Saints Sunday, we remember and give thanks for the life and ministry of the saints, women and men whose witness to the gospel of Jesus Christ has been a blessing in every generation. The witness of many of these blessed women and men, such as St. Francis of Assisi or St. Teresa of Avila, are well known. Their writings have become popular. Their deeds inspire us to name hospitals, churches, and schools for them, and their service to the church is taught to the faithful in every generation. Yep, the history of the Christian faith is a history of people who love mercy and justice and peace, and love it so much that some have even been willing to die for it. But our history is also a history of ordinary people doing extraordinary things with their faith. It has been a history of people who have given shelter to the poor, worked to free slaves, treated women equal to men, and in short, people who have believed that God created everyone and everything and are willing to treat all of their sisters and brothers as members of God's beloved family. And many, many of these saints are people whose names are rarely heard or known beyond their families or those they have willingly served in faith. These are the saints, known and unknown, that All Saints' Day is dedicated to. We set aside to honor the lives and ministries of those ordinary people, ordinary baptized people who came before us. However, this is not just a day we look only to the lives of the past. We also use it as a day to look forward and use the examples of the past to discern how we can become like the saints today. Or rather, as this morning's hymn stated so beautifully, the saints of God are just folks like me, and I mean to be one too. This is one of the reasons why we have this gospel lesson assigned to All Saints' Day. The gospel lesson, commonly referred to as the Beatitudes, is in reality an outline for practices of everybody who has been baptized into the life, death, and the very resurrection of Jesus Christ. Because today's gospel is about life and death. It's about getting it right in the time we have. And it's about the things that really do matter. Through the Beatitudes, Jesus is telling us in a very simple and yet extremely complex way what we really need to think about and use in our lives. Now, when you hear the Beatitudes, what do you think? Do you think that these are simply beautiful words, but they can't truly be followed in the real world? Can they? Or maybe you think, oh great, another reminder of all the ways I failed to live up to the calling of being a disciple of Christ. Well, if you had these thoughts or similar ones, you are not alone. The Beatitudes are not easy by design. They have been a source of inspiration and challenge throughout the history of the church. And they have confronted every saint to ever walk the earth, past, present, and future. They are the practices for all of us ordinary saints of God. For example, consider, just for a minute, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Now, granted, most of us probably will never, ever receive the Nobel Peace Prize. But that doesn't mean we're not called in our own ways to be peacemaker. Now, how exactly can we do this? How can we go about being peacemaker in our lives? Well, for starters, we could remember the words of one particular saint, St. Paul, as he instructs us to speak of Christ and his cross breaking down the walls that divide us, removing all barriers that keep us apart, and overcoming the hostilities that so often leave us living more and more in anger with one another, and choosing that anger over peace. Break down that hostility. In short, we are called by Christ to be saints who seek to be the peacemakers and not wait for others to make the peace. And in times when we feel it is an impossible task, we're not alone. But we do need to remember the saints that came before us who did help others find peace in their lives by seeking to break down barriers and hostilities. I'm not talking about the peacemakers who act on a global scale and end war. I'm talking about a peacemaker. Right here, right now, in you. A peacemaker can also be a person who helps a family end conflict in their lives and see the benefit of love conquering hate in their relationships. A peacemaker can be also a friend who prayerfully helped someone overcome a drug addiction, and as a result, that person finds peace in their sobriety. My friends, there are endless examples of how to be a peacemaker. And I'm sure if we think and reflect long enough, we all have examples of past peacemakers in our lives. Examples we can follow. And today, as I already mentioned, we honor all those saints. Because All Saints' Day is here to hopefully help us reestablish in faith and prayer our links with these Christians and with the people in our lives they may represent. These folks, these friends, these loved ones have gone on before us to the nearer presence of God, but yet they are also connected to us. The saints inspire us not to lose sight of the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal, that is Jesus' imperative to love God with all our hearts and minds and strength, and to love our neighbors as ourselves. Remembering the witness of saints allows us to continue to hold them close and give us strength whenever and wherever we stand. Remembering their lives can help us feel God's comforting touch when we are discouraged or sorrowful, and it can help raise us up when we fall. But remembering the saints is implicitly a call to action. By looking at the good examples of those who have come before us, we can think beyond our limitations. We can believe that we have the potential to respond to God's gracious love with active love for others, and with commitment and caring and giving. The saints, they just lead us into the fullness of life that God intends for us all. But when does it start? The answer is simple. It starts today. It starts by loving our enemies. It starts by showing kindness to people who don't deserve it. It grows into the ability to bless those who curse us, to pray for those who mistreat and take advantage of us. And it manifests itself in the ability to listen and show honor to those who are forced to beg or who feel less than they really are. On this All Saints' Day, we remember those who have gone before us, and we are reminded of how short our time on earth is. We are reminded of the precious nature of that time and the fact that that is irreversible. We only live it once, and we truly don't have time to wait for George to do it, because tomorrow is promised to no one. So don't wait for George to be the peacemaker. Don't wait for George to help the blessed poor. Don't wait for George to be the truth seeker. And don't wait for George to make the changes you want to see in the world around you. And don't wait for George to invite others into this congregation so that it can grow in the gospel. Most of all, we owe it to all of our loved ones who we consider saints not to wait for George to make us live like saints. For we should strive to be more than one thing. We should strive to all be saints. Amen.